No longer am I not a scientist. Although I attended Sunday school as a child, religion was more of a social phenomenon back then. After spending Sunday morning in worship, you returned to your regular routine on Monday. Then I completed my undergraduate degree, medical degree, and surgical residency, and I was like most people. I figured I'd get around to talking about faith sometime. It lacked specificity. My life was jam-packed with a full-time job, my husband, and our 4 young children. I didn't prioritize my life around faith. Although I was highly independent, successful, and intelligent, I made an effort to be a lady of honesty, integrity, and ethics. God didn't seem necessary to me. Then it hit you. While kayaking in South America, you had a sudden yearning for God, and that's when everything changed. Could you tell me a little bit about that incident? Indeed, I was ensnared beneath 8 to 10 feet of water after my kayak crashed over a waterfall. I was about to drown, and there were no ways out. It would be easy to think that my main motivation for seeking God's help was a lack of alternatives, but in reality, I could have chosen to ignore God or turn to Him. As always, it is up to us. Regardless of what happened, I consciously decided to pray that God's will would be done in that situation. God, your will be done on earth, in my life, period. It was the first time, despite repeating the Lord's Prayer hundreds, if not thousands of times, that I genuinely meant it. Nor when I wanted it to, nor in the manner I preferred, but really relinquishing command of my life. That was the beginning of an extraordinary and delightful journey, an event I never would have dreamed possible. I hadn't given much consideration to dying at that stage of my life, as is typical for most individuals. I had patients who had experienced death or been around it, but who had never lost a relative or close friend. I was living the good life and hadn't had to deal with many problems. Until we experience hardship, particularly loss, we never give much thought to or scrutiny of our beliefs. This life review was a sign from God that what you said was true while you were held in Jesus' arms, Dr. Neal. It gave you the opportunity to witness suffering firsthand, which paves the way for growth in empathy and comprehension of the domino impact of human harm. Would you be able to elaborate on that life evaluation you went through? During my life review, I re-immersed myself in the most painful memories, this time with a newfound awareness of how they affected me. In that instant, my whole life's narrative became clear to me. Everyone else's life stories and backstories were also laid bare before my eyes. Because once again, we as a culture failed to grasp the concept of forgiveness. It was never about that. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. Or, I forgive you, but I'll never want to see you again, are common ways of expressing this concept. Reconciliation with God, however, is not like that. Complete and absolute, it's the same distance as the east from the west. In my opinion, it all starts with God knowing our names and our stories. I didn't have to forgive because I understood everyone's tale in these painful situations. Wherever God's love is present, there is no place for negative feelings like anger, bitterness, shame, etc. It was incredible since we've all been through it countless times, even if we don't often give it much thought. There are plenty of examples in our past of being wrongly assessed or being wrongly judged ourselves. Once you have a grasp of the background, the negative emotions dissipate, and you're left with love, empathy, or sympathy. God wanted to give me even more perspective when He was giving me that, while I was held in Jesus' arms and had this life review. I looked down at my lifeless corpse and saw my buddies attempting CPR. My ascension into heaven was initiated by God. Is it possible for you to elaborate on the trip? That was incredible. Out of the water sprang my spirit, essence, or self, whatever you like. Neither being conscious nor unconscious has ever happened to me. Quite the opposite. I felt more alert and aware. Every one of my senses was amplified to 11. There was a disconnection between time and space. At this one instant, I could feel the entirety of eternity. Experiencing 1,000 realities at once, each with its own unique characteristics, is what it's like. Even if it defies logic, I can't find a good way to put it into words. Those who had known and loved me for all of my existence welcomed me with open arms. People constantly wanted to know if I recognized them, but I hadn't known anyone who had died at that time in my life, so I didn't. Still, I recognized them as significant figures in my family tree, maybe a great-grandmother or grandparent who passed away before I was born. When I returned home, they were ecstatic. They led me along a road that was a visual feast, a tapestry of vibrant blooms and vibrant colors that lifted my spirits. Death, in my belief, is the gift that God gives every one of us to experience full knowing and love as well as to fill our hearts with joy and beauty. They guided me to a massive building where I felt like I spent hours learning about the universe's divine order, how everything fits together, how each of the world's billions of people is loved and cared for as if we were the only one, and how everything is interrelated. Everyone and everything, from humans to animals to the natural world, is an integral aspect of the whole. We are all divine creations, intricately linked and interdependent. Afterwards, I was expelled. That was going to be my question, but then I remembered that you wanted to remain, and I was instructed by God that it wasn't my time. My time on earth was not yet over, and I needed to return to my physical form. A long list of tasks I still needed to accomplish was handed to me after I voiced my objection. No, I'm a pretty concrete thinker. Many people wonder if it was a dream or a premonition. So, okay, here is your list. It amounted to little more than a laundry list. I might add that I wasn't particularly interested in, qualified for, or enthusiastic about any of the items on this list. That makes perfect sense because when things are easy, nobody changes, learns, or grows. Quite a few items on this list raised my eyebrows. The worst part was definitely hearing the news of my oldest son's impending and unexpected death. He was 9 years old and in good condition at the time. It was not likely that he would pass away at an early age. In my life review, I had repeatedly seen the reality in God's promise that there is a plan for each of our lives, one that includes hope and the world. And when I asked a logical question about it, why him? Why my son? I was immediately taken back to that point. I would like to mention that there is beauty in everything. Trust is always the deciding factor, as I was told. My spirit was returned to my physical form at that moment. Wow, and Dr. Neal, some years later, you did lose your son prematurely in a car accident. Yes, he was hit by a car and killed. And did that experience in heaven give you strength during the loss of your son? First of all, I would state that the only way I could wake up every day wondering if that was going to be the day is if I have experience with spiritual truth and if I have absolute faith in God's promises. There were a number of mornings when you woke up wondering if it was the day because it was 10 years later. Neither the physical nor the emotional anguish of losing my baby were spared because I put my faith in God's promises. I had deep affection for him, and we were quite close. Returning his presence would be immense relief. Just like any parent would, I would gladly sacrifice my life just to have him back. However, I must confess that my faith in God's promises allowed me to feel immense thankfulness and joy even on the most tragic of days. As long as you are able to make a deliberate decision to put your faith in God's promises, I believe that joy can be found in the here and now,